Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first Rixxo webinar of 2025. My name is Henry. I lead marketing here at Rixxo. Firstly, wanted to thank you all for joining us. We hope you find today's webinar valuable. We've designed this session to provide both actionable and practical advice that will help anyone operating in the B2B space, whether you're a merchant, vendor, or agency. So today's webinar, How to Choose the Right B2B E-commerce Platform for Your Business, is from Rixxo co-founder and CTO of the B2B E-commerce Association, Chris G, and strategy lead here at Rixxo, Hugh Pembroke. Chris and Hugh are going to be taking a look at the flaws of the traditional RFP process, the relationship between an organization's people, their processes, and their platform, and presenting a new approach to platform selection, which focuses on business needs rather than platform features. Before I hand over, just a few bits of housekeeping. Firstly, please do say hello in the chat and let us know where you're watching from. Just make sure your chat settings are switched to everyone and not panelists and hosts. And if you've got any questions for Chris and Hugh, then yeah, drop them either in the chat or the Q&A feature, and I'll get through as many as I can with them at the end. Finally, we're going to be sending out the recording, the RFP template, and all other resources from this presentation afterwards. So keep an eye on your inboxes for when that drops. So yeah, without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Hugh, to kick things off.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Henry. And thanks everyone for joining today's webinar. So I'm Hugh. I've spent the last 10 years working in B2B e-commerce across the UK and Australia, holding roles both on the client and agency side. And before my current role as strategy lead with Rixxo, I was the e-commerce and digital lead at Signet, which is one of Australia's largest packaging companies. And you're probably going, well, how's that relevant today? But in my time at Signet, I worked on an RFP and digital transformation project, re-platforming the e-commerce system there from a custom legacy e-commerce platform onto Adobe Commerce. This helped drive the business to achieve 70 million in revenue online. And as part of that, we got the business to having 70% of all SME invoices going through the e-commerce store. So these days at Rixxo, I'm helping our B2B e-commerce clients through the same challenges I faced during my time at Signet, and really looking forward to share some of the insights, some of the lessons, and some of the battle scars that we had during my time there on the topic today as part of this webinar. And joining me today, we have Chris G.
Hello, thanks Hugh. Yeah, great to be on here with you. So I'm Chris, founder of Rixxo. My brother and I started the agency in 2012 because we wanted to help people. We believed there was a better way, and we've been pushing and pushing to change the way people do things and be better every day. And that's led me into my role now as the CTO for the B2B e-commerce association and UK lead. And I spend the majority of my time now working with platforms, agencies, B2B technology vendors and merchants, talking all things B2B and helping to create community and education. And so there is an absolute glut of information that is in this guide. And to try and get through everything in an hour would be an absolute disservice. But we're going to jam as much as we can in and try and leave you with at least a couple of nuggets of B2B e-commerce platforming gold that will make a change for you. And this is because the choosing the right B2B e-commerce platform is a really critical step. And I get asked at every show by almost every merchant I meet, yeah, but what's the right B2B e-commerce platform? And to me, the right one doesn't mean, the best. The right or the best one doesn't mean that it's got the most features, they have the best sales pitch. It's how it aligns with your business and how it fits to satisfy your needs. But communicating that and getting that down into a way that you can systemize selection is really challenging. And for many, it can be quite overwhelming. So we've built this guide by interviewing a load of agencies, platforms, systems integrators, and merchants. And we've taken the advice, we've taken their challenges, and we've turned that round to create some changes to the traditional RFP template that are going to contribute to the success of choosing the right platform for you. So when the guide drops in full, you're going to get a framework for platform selection, lots of useful templates. There's project mantras to keep you focused and aligned as a team on the project. There's several AI tools that touch on different parts of the process and a master checklist to keep you on track. But today we're going to focus on what we're calling the secret sauce, the bit that really makes the difference during that RFP in that template. And we hope that that gets you set up for your platform selection, recommending a platform, helping somebody choose their next platform. And yeah, we're really excited to share this with you.
So yeah, as Chris sort of mentioned, there's going to be a lot of information coming out post-webinar today. And, you know, it's been a tough task to try and distill down all that information that'll be in those guides into an hour. But in terms of what we will give you today is we'll give you sort of the greatest hits or the exact summary of what's going to be in that guide, and really try to talk you through the process at a high level so that when you do get some of that documentation, it'll make a lot more sense and sort of steer you through reviewing that. So we'll start today in talking to the problems that we often see within the RFP and B2B e-commerce, and just some common threads and themes that we sort of see where merchants tend to get it wrong, or perhaps, you know, areas of improvement. The focus or the North Star for your RFP process needs to be about understanding your business needs. So we're going to spend a lot of time going through that today and discussing how to use these business needs as part of your RFP process to really anchor the decisions you're making to be addressing those needs. We're going to discuss the roles of platform, people, and processes, and give you a framework to assess both your business needs and requirements in relation to those important aspects of your business. We'll try and share a couple of real-world examples and provide these examples to you throughout the webinar today. And then lastly, as Chris sort of mentioned, there's been a lot of research, a lot of discussions happening between agencies, platforms, thought leaders within the space. And we've gone away and we've created our methodology for platform selection, which we've crafted specifically for that, for B2B e-commerce. So we're going to run you through that, and you'll get all the sort of the documentation and stuff after the webinar today. Last little bit of sort of intros, but we've got to introduce Rixxo as well. So Rixxo, simply put, is we help B2B businesses grow online. But I suppose the more formal way of introducing what Rixxo does is we're a B2B commerce consultancy that's been helping wholesalers, manufacturers, and distributors automate, scale, and grow since 2012. And I think the key themes that we've got on the slide there really of how we've tried to anchor this RFP process as well. So you'll always hear us talking about what the business need it is that we're trying to address when recommending technology solutions. So that really talks to the first 2 points. And then when we talk about we implement, activate, and adopt solutions for growth. So not only do we offer that consultancy arm, but we also have development capability, and we're able to see those solutions through to the end. And then lastly, we sort of have where we're brought into projects. So we help recover and affirm existing projects. So from time to time, you know, an RFP process has gone wrong, or, you know, website build's gone wrong. This is where normally we get brought in to help, I suppose, realign that project, re-understand what the business needs that we're addressing, and look to move and progress the project forward. So I'll hand back to Chris to talk about the problems with the RFP process.
Thanks, Hugh. Yeah. So if you've done some research around B2B e-commerce platforms, then you've seen this term RFP, and it's often touted as this cornerstone of the selection process. Very formal way to outline requirements, evaluate who you're going to use, and make a decision. But I spent many hours trawling the internet, downloading B2B e-commerce RFP templates, and they fell short of the advice and feedback that I'd gained from doing my interviews. And it was clear to me that there was a disconnect. And whilst all the people I spoke to had said they wanted more alignment, they wanted to understand the needs more deeply, the templates that are being shared and pushed out and used don't solicit this process. And the key problems with these documents is they're too feature focused. The traditional RFP, when you look at it, is like an exhaustive list of platform features, or it's questions that solicit the exact answer you want from whoever has produced it. And I know that sounds a bit um, of a cynicist point of view, but that's how it can be. And so they lead us to choose on the shiniest features. And that creates a bias towards these shiny objects. They highlight the cutting edge features and the trends that we see the celebrity B2B e-commerce businesses saying were their success. But actually what they've done before that is they've got their baseline in place. And by focusing just on features, we and asking a platform or the vendor to tell us about these features, we have a lack of context. Why is the person asking for this feature? What problems it going to solve for them? What's their goal? Why have they prescribed this medicine for this ailment? And if we can understand that, we can make a better recommendation. And the questions that you ask are so important to gain the right response, because by asking people what requirements they want, we neglect asking them about their internal workflows. Who's the team? What's their preference for technology? What are their skills? What processes they have? We don't ask intrinsically about the problem we're trying to solve. We ask for them to self-prescribe that medicine. And that creates a very time-consuming and inefficient cycle. There's a back and forth involved in these traditional RFPs. And if you're doing it for the first time, you might not know how to play that game and go through that convoluted process. So the guide today is going to introduce an alternative approach, one that's going to help focus on really understanding and communicating needs first. And by shifting the emphasis from a feature checklist, what does your system do, to a needs-driven process. This is my problem. How does your system solve it? And we then create a comparison model that allows you to quickly, using a data-driven model, very easy, simple data-driven model, to align that response. So that's going to help to shorten the timelines. It's going to make it easier for platforms and vendors and systems integrators to give you their expert advice. And it's going to keep us dead focused on our goals and delivering those expectations.
Thanks, Chris. So based on that, I suppose the absolute critical part to this, and again, like I said, the North Star for your RFP process needs to be about deeply understanding your business needs. And before you even kick off any of the RFP sort of documentation, it's really important that you get a clear understanding within your stakeholder group about what are these business needs that need to be addressed by the project, which will help guide and lead all your discussions with agencies and platforms moving forward to make sure anything that's being recommended is always coming back to how it's addressing that business need. And because, or a quote that we often sort of talk about here at Rixxo is, if the only tool you have is a hammer, you tend to see every problem as a nail. And what we mean here is the real question we need to be asking ourselves in the process is, how can the tech fit into our unique processes and make them better, and not what tech do we need? As sort of Chris mentioned earlier, often it becomes an assessment of features in each platform and not an assessment of features in each platform that I need in my platform to solve my business need first. So this is really the key area where we see merchants often, going down the wrong path when it comes to the RFP process, and allows them to be swayed away from what they truly need to get out of the RFP process. So understanding your business need helps you anchor this RFP process to solving your problems and not creating more. So as part of that, we've sort of developed an impact framework that we use when we're looking at business needs to make sure we're understanding the full picture. And what we call this is the Rixxo Impact Framework. So it's not a new line of thinking by any means, but when we talk about people, process, and technology, we've really adapted this to process, people, and platform. So when you're choosing the right B2B platform, it isn't just about the technology. It's about aligning people, platforms, and processes to create that seamless solution for your business. With the RFP process, we're looking to change a significant part of this framework, being the platform. So when we're speaking about business needs and writing requirements, it's super important that we're taking into account what the impact is on process and what the impact is on people. And likewise, when we're looking at business needs and when we're looking at requirements, how can we solve that business problem with these three pillars? It's not always going to be with platform. Sometimes it's going to be an adjustment to process to make sure you're fitting in with the platform. This leads me into the next point is the elements don't exist in isolation, and the glue that sort of brings them all together is the integration. So to really get this working and really have a clear understanding, it's important to have that process documentation that we're providing to tech vendors to really make sure that these three elements come alive as part of your project. And then, so once we have a clear understanding of the business needs, and this sort of section will be covered in a lot more detail as part of the guide. So this is really an overarching key point sort of summary of what's included. But once the business needs have been determined and agreed upon, the next part is really about communicating your requirements. And I think the first part is around craft a clear and concise requirements document. So and a thing I suppose that's often missed as part of this is clients or people that have engaged us haven't included a project charter. And it's really important to include your project charter to make sure that there's an understanding of the overarching vision and goals for the project. And I think too often, we jump straight into requirements without providing that context to the tech providers or the agency that's assessing the RFP. There can be some pretty important information here around project management methodology, risk assessments when it comes to the project. What are the key risks within the business? Any key milestones that need to be hit, which may change approach into how we're going to solve these problems, as well as any budget recommendations. So providing all that context will allow you to get the best accuracy when people are responding to your RFP template. In regards to the requirements themselves, it's actually super important that you write these requirements for yourself. It's not about trying to, impress tech vendors or sound really smart to the different people that are going to read the document. It's super important that you really have a clear understanding in plain English of what your business needs are, and that anyone that comes onto the project, you can concisely explain the exact business need that you want as part of this. The next element of this is defining satisfied and how you're going to set the expectations with vendors. So as part of this, and something we probably see a fair bit, is removing ambiguity in your requirements document. So think about the words should and could and remove them and replace them, with must and will, and really try and lock that down to be a really quantifiable statement that you're making to make sure that there's a clear understanding by the tech partner or agency that's reviewing the platform. And then lastly, look at using the acceptance criteria to define with vendors when it's considered done. So this is really important because it really gives accuracy to how we're going to meet the requirement and how you're going to know that has been completed. And then the last point here is around and Chris will get to this in his demonstration later in the webinar, but look at mapping your requirements back to business needs to determine the value. So in our RFP framework template, we're going to show you how to do this. And this is probably something that you won't see in a lot of the templates, but it really allows context to be added into that document and really understand how the requirement is meeting a business need. And if a requirement's in there and it's not able to be backed by a business need, it's really then a discussion about whether that is truly a requirement within the project or not. And the last thing is, it's important to give this context to the experts to really help them make sure that they can provide the best solution to you. So the more context you're able to provide as part of the requirements writing and the acceptance criteria, the better responses you're going to get back from the tech platforms and the agencies that are assessing the documents.
Thanks, Hugh. Yeah, I totally agree about having everything in your language. And anyone who's ever heard me talk on technology and choosing technology or getting technology to work, I always say that technology is a language and it's not the story. And a developer or a solutions architect, their job is to translate your story into a different language. And so you shouldn't start by trying to translate, because you need to be able to understand the final version. So it's always best just to be yourself and say in your own words. Um, and then this people platform process thing, you're going to hear us say it a lot, and we will keep saying it as well. Um, this isn't really a technology project; it's a business transformation project. And if we go one step further, it's not really even a project; it's part of a program, because ongoing, the website, the platform, it's never finished. So it's always going to be going around, and this is a transformation program. And the framework will help to stay focused on that thought. So you can pin it up on your wall, print it, stick it in your notebook, do like we've done and put it inside the RFP template. And it's going to help us as we make changes now, as we make changes in the future. It's going to help us recognize where it's going to have a knock-on effect or mean other change in the business. And the point of me really reinforcing this is it is going to be a critical piece, a critical tool when we start using the new RFP template model.
So the next part we wanted to touch on of the guide is talking to the process and mapping your processes so that people are able to deeply understand the business processes which are crucial to the RFP and the project in total. The key thing here is getting this documentation sorted for the RFP, as it's really going to help external partners provide targeted solutions. It's going to minimize waste in terms of repetitive explanations and re-going over things as new people come into the project. So very important that as part of the RFP, we get this documented from day one, so that onboarding people into the project is going to be a lot easier and a lot quicker. So the key points here, so the foundations of process documentation. So the key here is to highlight and make sure that you have documented any revenue generating workflow within the business. And it might be from the procurement of the product all the way through to the returns or, the dispatch of the product. And ensure that the process has been approved by the process owner internally. So when we think about the customer journey or mapping the customer journey for an e-commerce platform, that's obviously very important in understanding, what platform we need to go with. But you think about the different departments that the customer journey touches. It's really important that that internal process owner has been consulted about, their area of expertise within that customer journey to make sure that you're getting, the right information and providing the right context through the tech providers, so that they're able to recommend the best solution. We often always ask, as part of this as well, and a really good practice to get into is include these user stories to add, additional context to what you're trying to explain as part of your requirements. There's plenty of, ChatGPT, for instance, there's plenty of AI tools that can really help what can be quite a monotonous task, and really help you speed up in terms of that. But yeah, really important to add those user stories within the document, to help speed that up. I think also, just when we talk about context, it's really important to explain the why, for why the new platform is needed and what is driving the digital transformation, both from a short-term sort of solution point of view, but also a long-term strategy point of view. And then really align it and talk to the outcomes that you expect from the project and how this will be achieved. So what I mean by that, so during my time at Signet, one of the key project goals was to get 70% of SME invoices going through the e-commerce platform. And when we think about the full 100% of customers, there's a whole heap of different workflows and different niche edge cases that we would have had to achieve to get the 100% up. But because we were only aiming for 70% and we wanted to get to that 70%, we just had to make sure that we did, enough of the workflows that was going to cover that user set really well. And I think be realistic in how many customers that you want on the platform and what type of customers you want to get onto the platform, particularly as you start in B2B e-commerce. It's really easy to aim for the moon in terms of all the features and functionality, but being concise and tying that back to an aspiration, a business need, is super important when we think about what's in the initial scope. The other one that's super important, and there's more information in the guide, is documenting your key business processes that really do impact the e-commerce success. So we touch on order fulfillment, pricing and discounts, inventory management, customer support, and returns and refunds. So important to make sure all the context and information is provided as part of that. And then lastly, leverage documentation for your RFP success. So I think what's super important here is you only want to be doing this documentation once. And I think we've all received an RFP template that's sort of half-baked or not sort of filled in properly, and it doesn't really help anyone. It doesn't help yourself, doesn't help the tech platform, and it doesn't help the agency provider in terms of recommending a solution. So spend the time getting the documentation into a really good state before you send it off to different people, because without that, you're not going to get the accuracy of response that you're going to need to have to get the project signed off internally. And once you do that, it allows for programmatic evaluation of the responses that you are getting, because that there's data integrity in the responses that you're getting back from, be it agency or tech providers. And I think allowing yourself to be able to do programmatic evaluation will help when you're trying to get the project signed off at an exec leadership level or board level, where you can show sort of scoring mechanisms that reflect the responses that you've gotten back. And I know Chris is going to touch on that later in the RFP template. He's got some nice sort of tables and formulas that he's done up that really help in terms of that programmatic evaluation.
Read that documentation as well, Hugh. Like the next biggest challenge in our ecosystem right now after platform selection is customer adoption. And if you've taken the time to document how you're running your business today, the effort that it takes to convert that documentation to the new method is much smaller nearer the end of the project. And that's going to enable the change for people and processes far more effectively, because it forms your training paperwork. It creates your customer adoption model. So it has a knock-on advantage. It doesn't just help this part of the project goes more smoothly, but it will speed you up at the other end when you want to come out the gates racing ahead to get that website live and everybody using it.
That's it. And then the last part in preparing, I suppose, for your RFP is talking about building the right team. So as Chris sort of touched on before, that it's not a technology project, it's a business transformation project. And at the core of all good businesses, we know, are people. So a couple of key tips and a couple of key points in terms of building the right team for your RFP and replatforming project. So I would say it's really key about getting the right people involved early. So sitting down and doing that analysis of who you need to bring in to the team is super important. It needs to be well balanced. You need to have, a generalist expert, is what we like to say, who's sort of that product owner or sees the long-term strategy, sees, is working mainly on the business needs and requirements, and then supplement that with subject matter experts that can come in and really be focused on the technical elements or the key details of your requirements and that expertise that you need in order to create that documentation. The second part of getting the right team is the role of digital ambassadors. So digital ambassadors, and what we mean by that is champions in your organization that bridge the gap between people, process, and integration. And really, like when I think about this, the best example is during the project that I undertook is we really tried to engage or have one of our digital ambassadors as a CX manager. So they were involved with the project, not so functionally that they were creating documentation, but they were aware, they were part of the internal stakeholder groups. They got updates throughout the process on what was selected and why, so that when it did come to launching the new site and that their team was heavily impacted on, they understand the context around why we've done this, why we made these decisions, and how we're going to solve them. And I think it's really important to build those digital ambassadors as part of your wider project team, as part of this sort of change management project of putting in a new e-commerce platform. And then the last two, obviously, the value of collaboration. So the collaboration is huge, and you do need a mechanism to keep you accountable to this. So ensure that you have a mechanism for collaboration, updating key stakeholders, both internal and external, throughout the RFP process, and where you're at with all that. I think over communication is really important as part of the RFP process, so everyone knows what's happening. And then lastly, some quick practical steps. So the first one would be start early. So identify those key players from different departments within the business, get them onboarded into the project, what you're trying to do, get them to read your project charter, make sure that they understand, why they're in the team. Define the roles. So outline responsibility for both the generalists and specialists and the digital ambassadors, and how they're going to help and assist throughout the project. Collaborate regularly, which is fairly self-explanatory. And then lastly, once you've put that team together, doing a sort of gap analysis or a knowledge gap analysis, and understand where you need to seek external expertise, and supplement your internal team with external consultants or agencies that have a demonstrated experience in B2B e-commerce. So once we call this our readiness checklist in terms of actually getting stuck into the RFP template, but once you deeply understand your business needs, you've been able to effectively communicate and document your requirements. You've got a process in place to monitor change, and a process in place where you've documented each critical process to your business, and you've built the right team. You're now ready to start the RFP.
Amazing, thanks, Hugh. Yeah, so we've just banged on all about understanding your own needs, and you might be sat there thinking, yeah, I know what I need. Thanks for the egg sucking lesson. But whilst it's all about you, it's not all about you. And what I wasn't expecting when I sent out the questionnaire to all of the systems integrators, platforms, agencies who helped me to create the data for this, was I kind of opened a Pandora's box and I touched a nerve. But there were some things that came back from all of them that was consistent. So we've spent several weeks trying to distill that into something short of a novel, whilst keeping it really short and practical. And it's kind of come down to these things: is features are not solutions unless they are aligned to a problem. But the problems and the aspirations are not communicated enough to the experts. And that prevents them from allowing to buy in to your success and contribute their expertise. And these RFPs that send out, deliver these features, don't garner the expertise that they have back in the correct way. So we want to focus on aligning with them, giving context and communicating. So the full 8-phase framework will be available when the guide drops. And Justin King at the eCommerce Association is working on a significant, in-depth platform selection framework that will be coming out later this year as well. And ours is very much strategic, about understanding needs, communicating alignment, and following this people, platform, process framework. But this next one coming along, if you're looking for a bit more instruction on what to do at each phase, then I would say watch along on the association to see what's coming. So I'm going to talk through the secret sauce part of the RFP template. This is the bit you've all been waiting for, as they say. And we're going to just step through, look at how we now create a document that conveys this alignment, the context, and communicates it for the project. So first thing is some clear instructions. In the RFP template, you'll find an instructions page. that gives you details on what to do at each phase. Rixxo's methodology is top to bottom and left to right. So we will be working in a similar way. Left to right through the tabs is the general order, and top to bottom on the sheets when you're on them. So we need to discuss all parts of our business now. What we want to do is we want to engage those people, look at those processes, and we want to make sure that we are looking at all the bits that touch what a B2B e-commerce platform can do. So the first thing we've done is we've created a topic checklist. And this is a way for you to track and make sure that you're sitting down with the relevant teams and discussing those parts. Because very frequently we'll get so far into a project and something will crop up. We've had stories recently of the wrong headless system being deployed on a framework that prevented SEO technology. And the relationships could go south because one topic wasn't discussed. So we've created a topic list. You can add to the bottom of it. And what we're going to do next to those topics is we're going to count requirements that align. And this is going to give us something different to a normal RFP template. This is going to give us some insight as to where our efforts are or aren't being put at parts of the business. And you can make assumptions. You can use the framework, you can use the impact framework, and you can say, hey guys, we've only got 2 requirements around currency. I find that a bit odd because we're looking to go international. Have we not communicated that? And as Hugh's mentioned, the stakeholder group, there's lots of people in the business. We can share this around. They can give you that insight as well. So this checklist is all about making sure we touch on those key topics and just making sure that by the end of the project, we have got requirements for it. And because we are B2B focused, because this is the B2B e-commerce platform selection process, we've taken the critical parts of B2B and we've separated those out. We've separated them and taken the topics, broken into subtopics. Wow, third time's a charm. And so if we didn't do this, then this document's going to get really unwieldy and we'll be finding it very difficult to align our requirements back to the things that we need. So again, you can add to this. There are parts of your business that may be unique even outside of the normal industry norms, but put them in here. Something this will give to your vendors and to your agencies and to your systems integrators as well. It's going to give them a really quick top level overview of how your business is set up. They will know from their experience, seeing what you've discussed and your top level strategy, how the state of the nation is looking. So the secret sauce, this is the bit that we feel is going to redefine this RFP process. This is where we communicate our pain points and aspirations above our requirements. Like going to the doctors and telling them what's wrong with us instead of what medicine to give us. And we've created a simple methodology for you to work left to right, address your pain point, and talk about how it affects you. And what happens if that problem or that milestone is achieved? What happens when that's gone? Can you identify the root cause of it? What's making that difficult? And importantly, how are you currently mitigating that? How are you keeping your business running and growing and pushing through, even though that isn't it? Because that's going to provide so much context. Can we digitize that mitigation? Can it be automated? Is it something that connecting your PIM and ERP will solve? Is it something that workflow in your EMS will help with? We also want to know, what's your desired outcome? Like, not just what does it look like if it's solved, what benefits the business, but what would you like to happen? Because you've got strategic plays, there's politics, there's budgets, there's time, there's all sorts involved. So how would you like that to be remedied? It gives more context again. And we then want to look at how we sort these into the right order for delivery. Now, almost all of the templates I downloaded only contain priority. Not one of them looked to assess how valuable that feature was to your business. It was just how quickly do you want it? And we assume that because you want it quickly, it's valuable. But that isn't always true. So we use Rixxo, at Rixxo, we use business value as a mechanism for prioritizing alongside priority. And business value is just a number, 1 to 5, 1 to 10, low, medium, high, however you want to use it. The actual number doesn't matter, it has no context, it's just relative to itself. So we want to play poker with these numbers. And as you start to do that, as you discuss with your stakeholders, as you discuss with your team and your digital ambassadors, it really becomes apparent what is valuable and what isn't, without asking people, is it urgent? Because we don't just want to deliver things because they're urgent. So we've got this alignment. We've now got a lovely sheet that documents our pain points, our aspirations, and how that's going to impact us if they go away. Everyone who now joins this project gets to contribute advice or expertise, gets full context. And we can start asking for requirements. Oh, I need a modular CMS so we can do easy updates. Dynamic rule-based discounting. Great. I'm sure if you've been through any RFP process and you've told someone you want something, they immediately come back and ask why. Then you discuss it, then it changes, then there's caveats, then there's misinterpretations, then there's assumptions. So let's get all of that out the way now. Let's just align your request for that feature to an ambition or pain point. Give me context why you want it. And then set your stall out for how you're going to measure that that's done. What? Just a couple of bullet points. That's going to be complete when X, Y, Z. These are the things that make, and I can't see videos, but I know that the people from the platforms and the agencies who are watching this now are going, yes, that would be great. We would be able to give such better advice because we've been doing this for a decade. We take people through this process. This is what they end up with it at the end. And delivery is always so much more effective. So the final scoring system, this has become really common in agencies. You will have almost certainly seen this, but to Moscow, to must have, should have, could have. We're talking time and budget always on these projects. And nobody wants to build contingency in more money or being late. So we can use should haves and could haves to determine contingency. And we can say that if I want this problem to go away, this is a must have. But a could have is the icing on the cake. Yeah, your platform does it, and we could do it, but it's not the one that's going to make the problem go away. So now we've got our needs, our requirements aligned to those needs with how we're going to measure it's complete, prioritized. We're good to get those out to some platforms and ask them to respond. And we've made that super easy for them. Familiar field of approach, we're going to ask them, is it core, custom, extension, SaaS? They can just give a one-click answer. What we really want to understand that's going to help us do a data-driven selection of this platform is the effort. How much effort do they believe, based on what they know, the need that we have, the context and the requirement, and what we consider that done, how much effort is that going to be? And this is one of those great insight points as well, because let's say we get 3 responses back and one is an effort of 5 and 2 of them are an effort of 1. Is that something that we should dig into? Is that a project risk? Is that something that's going to change our decision? Have we not communicated our needs maybe well enough or our requirements? Those are the things that really help us during this selection process. And when those responses come back, how do we compare apples with oranges and bananas? You know, the if they are in a free form response, if we've asked the question of some of these RFPs, how do you handle product variants? We're going to get 3, 4, 5, 6 answers that we can't really compare. So what we do in our system is we use the impact matrix to measure the responses. This particular response is a custom approach. It's going to be high effort. Of the approach they're proposing, how's it going to impact our people? Is it going to be positive or negative? How's it going to change our processes, impact our processes, positive or negative? This takes a little bit of practice, but once you've been through 5 or 6 lines, it gets a lot easier, and then you get your net impact score.
I think, Chris, if I can just jump in here, I think what's really good about this template is that when we talk about its complete when and getting that acceptance criteria within the template and within the framework, because this really then will enable you to get accurate answers back from vendors and agencies when it comes to approach and effort. As sometimes a requirement statement can be quite broad and has assumptions within it. But I suppose by adding in that when it's complete information, you get some real quality in terms of your data accuracy, and you can be comfortable that there's no assumptions within that approach and effort that they've given to you, thus giving you better data to present back to internal teams when it comes to budget and so forth. So I think that's a really core part of this tab within the template that really helps in terms of aligning that stakeholder group and makes you not have to do as much stakeholder management later on when something is assumed and it goes wrong, for instance.
Yeah, totally. Because if you've got something, maybe one vendor's scored it a 5 and one scored it a 1, that could just be that person's different interpretation of the requirement. Whereas if you've identified where the finish line is, they're both going to cross at the same point, and so they can give a more realistic measure of how much work there is. Yeah, I completely agree. So once we've got that that impact measure filled out, we now get data to tell us how well this platform aligns with our needs. Not which has the most features, not which has the best features, but by sending out what it is we're trying to solve and aligning them with the features and the requirements, we actually get data back from these people of how they match up. We can see how much of a project is a must-have to deliver success, how much value it's going to deliver. We can see effort and approach. And you can chuck this data into ChatGPT and you can draw out all sorts of other alignments. Take the lowest effort items and tell me how much business value I can realistically deliver for the least amount of effort. What problems can I solve with this platform that I can't solve with this platform? So the added benefit of having a data-driven model is that AI can support us in this decision and give us actual comparative metrics. So I know that's really top line. We're more than happy to revisit with people. We are going to be releasing more videos, more guides, more content around this. But the secret sauce is to understand your needs and to communicate those needs with all of the experts and digital ambassadors in this process so they can all have context and spot for mistakes, spot for assumptions. And as you work through this, think, align, context, communicate. These are the things that make the platform selection process a success, and not just asking what features and measuring them based on, did I ask for the right things? Please use our framework for the implementation to measure the knock-on effect of all these decisions within that people platform process framework. And this isn't the end, this is the beginning. And setting yourself up in this way, as Hugh spoke about earlier with documentation, getting your documentation, your diagrams, and everything in place now is going to mean your sales team adoption, your customer service team adoption, and your customer adoption at the end of this project is going to be light speed. in comparison to trying to reverse engineer what you've got delivered as to how am I going to use this? Because we've started with exactly that right at the beginning. So thank you for listening to me. That's a huge amount of data, and I sincerely hope that even within that compressed amount, there's a nugget or two for you to take away, and will make a difference to your next project.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so from me, I suppose as well, just thanks to everyone for joining the webinar today. And yeah, whether you're a merchant, a platform, or agency, we'd love to help. We'd love to have a conversation about B2B e-commerce platform selection. We're super passionate about this area, and we just love having those chats. So, if you want to book a call with us, feel free to reach out to Chris or myself. As we sort of mentioned, there will be a lot of documentation being released after this webinar. So if there's any questions related to those, or you want some more information or a run through, yeah, feel free to reach out, and more than happy. So yeah, thanks again, everyone. And I'll hand back to Henry for some housekeeping.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Yeah, so much useful information there, Chris. I love what you're saying about how businesses just get feature blind and just want the shiny thing. I think that's a tale as old as time itself, I think. We do have a little bit of time for a couple of questions. So if anyone has any, please do submit them now, either by the chat or the Q&A box. I'll keep an eye on those. Chris, kind of re-platforming and doing it right, it's not a small bit of work, right? Like what advice would you give to those, maybe with a small digital team, perhaps they're a team of one, who, they're often firefighting and maybe just don't have the resources or time to kind of complete this process?
Yeah, great question. I would say that you must make time, because you can go slow now to be fast later. And if you can communicate at scale what it is you need, and bring experts onto your side. And I can tell you, I'm working with agencies, platforms, and systems integrators through the association. They desperately want to be involved in your business and make a difference, and they truly want to get in there. So if you are the visionary and you've got this goal, but you're pushed for time, get experts to support you, communicate clearly, get them aligned with what you need, and they will make it happen. But if you can't, then don't start yet. It will become even more overwhelming. It is a complex process, and you could be opening up a can of worms if you go after it without a plan.
And I'll jump in there as well, Henry, we spoke about getting a project charter together. That might be your starting point in terms of trying to get internal buy-in and using that to manage up about why, the e-commerce RFP platform selection is really important to get that additional resource or to get that sign off. But having that sort of documented exec summary project charter, for instance, about the vision of where you need to go is a super important sort of stakeholder management piece to get that buy-in and for people to in your business to understand the why of why you need to go down this path.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So there's a question here around is there any advice that you would give to a business that has traditionally been kind of primarily B2C that's now moving more into B2B? Is there any kind of specific advice you would give to those businesses?
Yeah, it sort of speaks to what we were talking about today in terms of looking at your process documentation and where your B2C, I suppose, customer journey differentiates from your B2B customer journey, and being really clear on what you need from a B2B functionality point of view. There's lots of different, I suppose, online business models between, people that, traditionally were in fashion, say, and have gone into more of a wholesaling type model. So I think that's really, a lot of the stuff we talked about today about being super clear on what you need and how you need to change your customer journey or those process flows to facilitate that B2B ordering functionality, for instance. So that's where I would start is mapping out where that diverges and what that B2B model is, because the thing with B2B e-commerce is there's so many ways to conduct commerce from a B2B point of view, and B2B e-commerce is a huge thing. It's not just front-facing websites with, some fulfillment out the back. There's a heap of different ways that you can do it. So yeah, I would start with, that's where I would start.
It's far cheaper to come up with a plan on paper and draw some diagrams and test with your future potential customers than it is to build something and figure it out. You might have you might be using an ERP right now that struggles to handle bulk orders, and then you would have to change that. And if you know what the future looks like on paper, you can test all of your theories before actually spending money on platform technology changes, training, because everything according to that framework, every change you make to people, to process, to platform, or any integration, it's going to knock on some way to the other. And so we want to be mindful of that we don't actually make that change and create that chain reaction without being aware of what's going to happen. I think that's the bit that hurts people the most, is the chain reaction through a real positive intent. An action of positive intent creates a negative feeling from a chain reaction.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, thanks both. That's fortunately, all we have time for today. But yeah, thanks to everyone that's been watching along. Do keep an eye on your inbox. We'll be sending out RFP template and all resources from this webinar a bit later today, so you can start using them right away. Details of our next webinar are going to be revealed over on our LinkedIn. So yeah, do make sure you drop Rixxo a follow. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Henry. Thanks for organizing.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.